everybody, and welcome to the Brown Bag Chat at the Public Library of Mount Vernon in Knox County. My name is Jamie Lyn Smith, and I am a novelist who lives in the Mount Vernon Gambier area. And I'm really excited to welcome my colleague and new friend, Anton Dudley, who is a playwright. And the reason we wound up here together is because both of us were really fortunate to be awarded individual excellence grants by the Ohio Arts Council. And so we're going to have a brief discussion of our work, share a little bit of what we've been working on as writers and artists. And first, I wanted to say two quick things. One is, some of you may recognize me from the library because I work there. But this is something that I do, kind of like on my own. And because both Anton and I engage with current affairs and public discourse, I want to be clear that none of the opinions, thoughts, statements, or anything like that today represent anything other than our own views. And they don't necessarily reflect the views of the public library, any of our patrons, all of that good stuff. So now that my official Declaration of Independence is aside, I also wanted to share with you, I'll put my library writing hat back on, that anyone who lives in Ohio and has lived here for a year can apply for an Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award. And these are wonderful. They basically give you a grant. The awards are fluctuating a little bit because of COVID. It's between $4,000 and $5,000. And what it does is it gives artists of all backgrounds and in many, many genres the opportunity to take a little time off work on your art, or maybe go to a writing residency, or do a small premiere, or make a short film. The areas of award include choreography, criticism, fiction, nonfiction, music composition, playwriting or screenplays, and poetry. They also have awards for crafts, design arts and illustration, interdisciplinary, collaborative and performance, media arts, photography, visual arts in 2 dimensions, and visual arts, 2 and 3-dimensional visual arts. Whew, that was a mouthful. So pretty much, if you're doing it and it's creative and you have a body of work and an artist statement, and body of work can be, a short story, a few poems, a couple of paintings. It's not like you have to have, a bunch of other awards or, 25,000 gallery showings or things like that to do this. It's set up for emerging artists. So if you're new or relatively new at what you do, then I would encourage you to go ahead and apply. There's no application fee. Katie Davis is the person who handles this at Ohio Arts Council. And in the comment section of this video, I will put her contact information as well as a link to next year's Ohio Arts Council Awards. And I think it's fair to say, on behalf of Anton and myself, we thank the Ohio Arts Council.
Thank you very much.
We're very grateful for that opportunity. And now with that, I guess we will switch over to, Anton is going to tell you a little bit about his project, and I'll tell you a little bit about mine, and then we'll both take turns reading excerpts from our work and ask each other questions, and that'll be the day. So, Anton, what are you working on? Tell me all about it.
Great, thank you. So I received this award for a play called Song of the Wind. And this is a relatively new play. One thing I'm very interested in is rural landscapes and how they affect people's relationships, both to themselves, other people, and to the larger world, which they might not have access to living in those landscapes. And one of the rural landscapes that's always really attracted me is the islands of the UK. My whole family is from England, and I had a chance to go there a few times and research these. There was an article about 10, 15 years ago that really sort of grabbed my heart. There was one school on an island in northern Scotland, and a teacher took a plane and a boat, a 2 hour and 45-minute round trip journey every day to teach one student. This was the only child of school age left on the island. And finally, the government canceled that public school because it was only serving one person for budget cuts. And it meant that this child had to go to the mainland and leave their family and their community in order to study in the public education system. And that always kind of stayed in my mind as I was looking into the history of the islands and other contemporary issues affecting them. So Song of the Wind is actually set on the North Channel Islands, which are between Ireland and England. And I have both family members in Ireland and England, so this kind of half space really excited me. And thinking about people who live in half spaces, who live in two worlds simultaneously. And this play looks at two young men, Dehi and Carrick. And Dehi and Carrick, which is, they're the main characters in the play. The time in the play moves backwards. So we start actually when they're both 30. And then we go back sort of every 4 or 5 years until we land with them as they're 13 and 14 in the last scene, which is one of the scenes I'll be reading for you today. And this play is sort of based around what happened to them. We sort of trace in the first time we see them, their relationship is in a really bad place. And actually Carrick ends up committing suicide. And then we go back through time to sort of see how we got there. And part of it is built on the idea that he left the island to go study on the mainland, thanks to his teacher, Miss Tatum, which I'll be reading a monologue for her also. And because I like these sort of stories that involve two worlds that combine, this play is also rooted in both religion and local folklore. And it also goes between kind of fantasy and reality. So there's a bog creature in the UK named Jenny Greenteeth, she's a monster who lives in bogs. And the rumor is that she climbs out of the bogs and eats children who play around them. Of course, she has been created to scare children away from bogs in which they can drown. So that's sort of the basis of this play. Currently, I teach at Kenyon College as well. And I'm working on a digital theater cabaret. During COVID-19, obviously a lot of theaters are closed until mid-2021. And it's been very important for me to sort of join this conversation about what digital theater could be, because I think it's important that theater stays alive and relevant and purposeful and immediate in this moment. Especially as I teach drama here at Kenyon, I don't want to teach my students to do something that I don't believe is possible of doing at this moment. So I'm developing a digital theater cabaret here, and then also a digital theater series next spring while I'm on leave from Kenyon. And I think this is an important new form that's sort of been emerging in the last couple of months. I think the problem with a lot of filmed theater is meant to be live and not meant to be filmed, so it either ends up looking like cheap film or it ends up looking like the camera is sitting in the seat in which you should be sitting. And these are sort of the two problems that I have with filmed theater. So I think a lot of work has happened in the last few months to try and develop this new form called digital theater, where you have live performance that is done for the camera. And so that you can have those two worlds combined to create a new medium. So that's currently what I'm working on. But yeah, Jamie Lyn, how about you?
So my novel is called Hometown, and it started as a story that I wrote in my graduate school MFA program. And it was called Lifeguards then. And when I went to get ready to sell my book, my agent didn't like it and asked me to take it out of the collection, but I was like, no, I love it. So I kept fiddling around with it and submitting it. It got picked up by the Mississippi Review and was a finalist in a fiction prize. And I was like, maybe you're on to something. And so my reader, my mentor actually, Erin McGraw, wonderful novelist and short story writer in and of herself, said to me that the problem was the form. And you know the expression of putting a 10-pound sausage in a 5-pound casing. So I was trying to cram too much into this short story when in fact it needed to be a book and it wanted to be a novel. So once I placed it in a contest and sold it, I thought, okay, so I want to develop this a little bit more. And I was preparing to apply for the Ohio Arts Council grant, and I thought, I'm just going to write this up and submit this and see where it goes. And once I sent in the application, I couldn't quit working on it. And so I started to write the book then. But by way of summary, so that I can come in for a landing here, Hometown begins in 2000, just after the three main characters, Amanda, Jesse, and Tyler, graduate high school and take summer jobs at the community pool. Jesse is a young man who's searching for a way to live out his faith and a life of his own after rejecting his parents' kind of offbeat Christian separatist sect. And Amanda is gifted, very talented daughter of a well-respected local family, but she writhes under the scrutiny of being proudly biracial in a mostly white town. And Tyler struggles to reconcile his love for Amanda with his family's racism. And so he, this particular summer, is trying to decide between taking a dead-end job or military enlistment. When Amanda and Tyler break up, they're face-off at this end-of-summer party, which I set a kind of like a fictionalized version of the railroad trestle down there. We used to go there all the time in high school because I'm old enough to be before the bike path. So it's set in kind of a fictionalized, idealized version there. This end-of-summer party turns pretty deadly, and Jesse, who's you'll hear during the reading, pretty mild-mannered, has to decide if he's going to rescue and intervene or not against powers larger than him. And that's just the first chapter. So when the rest of it happens, it's 2018. And the subsequent chapters rotate point of view between Amanda, Jesse, and Tyler. And each of them have, had 18 some years in between when they saw each other, more or less. So Amanda is recently widowed. She's returned to Laurelton with her two children, and she's raising them with help from her uncle, who's the longtime local sheriff. She thrives in her work as an advocate at the domestic violence shelter and has wound up playing the piano at Jesse's progressive evangelical church. Jesse became a minister and stayed in Laurelton. He and his wife are raising their daughter Faith with the help of his mother, and in part because his wife Litza is a recovering addict. And Tyler has returned to Laurelton after serving in Iraq, so he's divorced. He actually works for Amanda's uncle at the sheriff's department as a deputy and is running for sheriff. So events are set in motion in the rest of the book when Tyler comes home from work early and stumbles on his son dressed as a woman. And they have a physical altercation, and his child flees to Jesse's house because he's friends with Jesse's daughter, Faith. So they wind up at the shelter with Amanda. And their lives all begin to truly intersect when Tyler is called in for questioning, and the high school friends are reunited all at once for the first time since 2000 under these really turbulent circumstances. So that's where the novel goes. From there, it's on. And yeah, so that's Hometown, at least as much as I know about it for now. Thank you. Would you read a little bit for us?
Sure,
Cool.
yeah. So I'm going to start with scene 6, which is starts with a monologue by Miss Tatum, who's the school teacher. I think I'll let her speak for herself. So okay. She's speaking to Dehi, who is the youngest of the two, Dehi and Carrick, and Dehi's the one who eventually leaves the island. So we are on the heath, just at the edge of the water. Dehi is lying motionless. Child? Oh, sorry, child, I didn't mean to give you a fright. Miss Tatum? Who do you think I was? Jenny Greenteeth, come to snack on your bones. I knew I'd find you here. I'm sorry to break our agreement, but I can't leave things like that. No one should. What you said, Dehi, what you did, it was unkind and it was unfair. Not to mention, it's going to leave a bruise. If I'd known earlier you had such a throw in that arm, I might have put you up for cricket and not the university. I didn't expect that of you. One or two of the others, perhaps, but roughness like that, not of you. I can see why you like it here. The air's lovely. Mind if I smoke? There'll be the death of me, but Satan knows a good time and he likes his parties well attended. Do you smoke? I didn't think so. You can always tell from the skin. Yours is like Jersey cream. It's no wonder they hate you at the school. And then take a shine to you at the same time. You're like a fairy. I'm not saying anything, but you know what they say about fairies. Not good enough for heaven, not bad enough for hell, so they stay here on earth, among us, but not with us. It was cruel of you, Dehi. Not that it hurt. Well, it did. But you don't fancy the blokes I do without suffering a few scratches. But in front of the others, it's hard enough to get them to listen and do their lessons. But if the one student worth more than his spit rebels, well, it's just an invitation to the rest of those boogers. Don't matter they've seen me down at the pub with my arse in the air. I could always say, look at Dehi, he's one of mine. I can't be half bad. And they would, you know, every time. Gobsmacked, dead silent, they'd have to agree. We got a scholar like that on this island and it's thanks to Miss Tatum. Well, you and I know that's not the case. But when the questions start flying, I take full responsibility for you. And then today, you snap our bond in public, throw the book at me, literally. I've always had Shakespeare on the brain, but I didn't need him smacked against it. On the island of all thugs, you were my one ally. And smack. I won't do that to you. You're not sorry, are you? Good. Don't be. Don't ever lose that fire. It's a crap thing I'm doing, child, but I've got to go. There's only one like you every 10 years, and on this island, that's only a few hundred. So you think how many people there are in the world? How much choice it gives? But only if you live in it. It's all about distribution. If the distribution don't reach you, you've got to redistribute yourself. You can't just settle for what's in front of you. You sure you don't mind? No, wind will blow it away. It's bloody cold up here, even with the sun on you. It's his arms, child. I never felt warmth like that. I'm sick of being cold. It's not very modern to pick up and move for a man I know, but he wouldn't move here. I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. And if you think I'm throwing my life away for him, the truth is, I never really belonged here. I played the part, but I'm not even an actress, child. I don't want to be. I want to be me, and I want to be warm. And even if I only know what one of those is, if I redistribute myself, I'm sure I'll find the meaning of the other. I know you think I'm abandoning you, but I set you up, didn't I? The university in Belfast, they're going to teach you more than I ever could. Oh, say you'll go. It'll cost you nothing. You're good, and they want you. I know I sprung it on you, but say you'll go. You know what I've always liked about you, child? You weren't afraid to dream. You're not Irish at all. We're realists here. It's why we drink so much. Realism hurts. And the Irish know that better than anyone. So we step out of it, only way we know. But not you, Ed in the clouds. In truth, you must be American. Americans don't settle. They all become famous. And even if they aren't rich, they live like they are. Bloody dreamers. Is it any wonder the Irish all go there? Your mum wants you in university. She told me. If you love someone, set them free. Don't know how I taught you anything. All I know is bloody song lyrics. But I love you, child. And so it's time to let go. That, and I'm going to love that man so hard, they're going to ask me to write a book about it. His arms, child, massive. And he's got 3 of them, if you know what I mean. Go out in the world and find what you need. Don't pretend you're getting it here. They're going to have to kill me to get me to come back here. I'm out of cigs. She wanders off. So now I'm going to cut to the last scene of the play. And in this scene, Dehi and Carrick are both 14. And they're sitting at the edge of the shore again. Dehi starts talking. I was dreaming I was a child in your arms. You sound like a little girl. Yeah? We're 14 years old. That dream will never come true. Suppose not. How's your mother? Good. Is your cat still alive? Yeah, we put her down yesterday afternoon. Was that why you weren't here then? Yeah, my sister was crying, and I had to sit up with her. Where was your mother? She works Mondays. Oh, right, I forgot. We only buy food on the weekend. Stupid. That's when everyone shops. The line's too long. You and your mum should go on Monday. Say hello to my mother. They used to be friends. Yeah, before she was with my dad. Oh, no, he was with her. Well, what do you mean they were together? Yeah, well, your dad's the one with the reputation. Isn't that why he ran off to the mainland? Well, whichever way, my mother isn't too happy about you with yours. It's probably why we only shop on the weekend. Yeah, suit yourself. Did you bring minty chewing gum? Get your own. Well, your mother gets it cheap, though, you promised. Well, I forgot. Well, it's just, I didn't bring any minty chewing gum, Dehi. And if you say you're going to meet me at 4, then you should be here at 4. Did I keep you waiting then? Yeah, you did. Oh, aren't you just an impatient little Hoover? That's not what I meant. Are you scared of old Jenny Greenteeth? Think she's lurking about in the bog? No, you are. Think she's going to grab onto your ankles and pull you screaming into the bog, chew you up and spit you out like a little bit of peat moss. It's getting dark and I don't like it. You still waited. Well, that should make you happy. It does. You know, I won the other day. Yeah? Yeah. What's that? Rugby, what you think? Oh, that's good. Yeah, it was. Yeah. You don't watch the rugby? No. Why not? I don't like it. How do you not like rugby? I just don't like it, so. Everyone likes rugby. I'm not everyone. No, that you aren't. You don't come here on your own, do you? Never. Because of Jenny Greenteeth. If you're going to make fun of me, I'm not. I'm the one that doesn't. Yeah. Look at you, little rosy cheeks. Jenny Greenteeth be salivating at the sight of you. Give over about Jenny Greenteeth. You're a little girl. No, yeah, you are. Go on then. Don't know that I can now, thinking about her crawling out the bog. It's not true, Dehi. It's just a story. It's not just a story. What about Bobby Denham? What about him? Gone off and played in the bog and he never came home. So they found his woolly cap covered in green ooze. That's so. Because it had been in the bog a fortnight. What do you think it would look like? Yeah, but don't you think it's strange? They never found his body, only his cap. And you know what they say? Jenny Greenteeth pulls little boys into the bog and eats them there, then flosses her teeth with their dark brown hair. That's what they say. That's why all they found was his cap. I think you're talking a load of rubbish. I think Bobby Denham would disagree. Bobby Denham was a nasty little prat who probably got what was coming to him, with or without the help of one Jenny Greenteeth. It's getting dark. If you want to get home before the sun does, I suggest we go. Didn't you bring the torch? Of course I did. I've got further to go than you. I wish we could go to my house. That's not going to happen. Could do, someday. You don't half notice the real world, do you, Dehi? Have you ever heard a wind song? What? A wind song. It was in that poem we read for school. Didn't read it. Why not? Don't have to, do I, with you jabbering on about it? His heart awoke from lonely sleep, and from the heath a wind song sang. I forget the rest. I don't think I've ever heard one. There's no such thing, but it was in the poem, so bloke must have made it up. He thought he must have heard it. Music in the wind. Why else would he write about it? So you'd have something to dream about. Drive yourself doolally with all of that. Well, what do you dream about? I don't. Can't sleep? Of course I sleep. And you don't dream? Why would you go to sleep just to do stuff? I go to sleep to sleep. You might too if you're more active with your day. I dream of leaving. Well, here? Yeah. To go where? I fancy living in a city where there's always lights on, where you can always hear other people. Can't be private in a city.
I don't think you need to be private in a city. No one cares. You can stand in the middle of the street stark naked and be perfectly invisible. Islands all nosy parkers, but the city, they've got other things to worry about, like their own lives. Well, you be sure to visit me here, slopping the pig's dinner out my farm. Won't catch me in no bloody city. Going to have yourself a pair of oversized welly boots and a flock of sheep, are you? Where'd you get language like that? I'll box your ears in. Hey, okay, you win. Who's the strongest? Get off me. Who's the strongest? You are. Say it. Say, Carrick's the strongest. Give over. Say it. Carrick's the strongest. Now get off. You're hurting me. Yeah, you're soft, you are. Carrick? What? Did you take a bath after school? Is that why you weren't here at 4? I was filthy. The rugby field was muddy. Yeah, you're always filthy. It's why they call you Filthy Carrick. Hey, I'll box your bloody ears in. I don't care. I've never mentioned it before. Well, why are you on about it now? I just thought it was strange you had a bath after school. Wanted to know why. Because I felt like being clean. Why else do you have a bath? I bet your mum wasn't too happy using up all the hot water. Well, she wasn't home, was she? Probably on the mainland for the night with your father. Shut up! It's getting dark. I'll put the torch on, scare away old Jenny Greenteeth, shall I? No, she won't come out at night. No, at night she sleeps at the bottom of the bog, scraping the bones of the little boys she's ate during the day. She files them down with a little piece of flint, then builds traps with them to catch little girls and rabbits and moles and sheep. And when the boys hear their screaming, they run to the bog to set them free. Then Jenny Greenteeth will pull those boys into the bog and feast on them. So we can stay out here all night then if Jenny's busying herself making cages and traps. No. Because at night comes Ad Seed. But what? The Ad Seed. They appear as witches with great fangs, or perhaps as shiny black horses with fiery eyes and terrible teeth. They come at midnight and steal your sanity, only if you've done nothing wrong. Only if you've done something wrong, but who hasn't? If not them, there's the Black Dog of Cannon Rock. Where have you been, Carrick? Were you never told? Because I'm too busy cutting the heads off rabbits so your mother can have dinner on her table. Too busy playing rugby and slopping feed to the pigs. Too busy living in the real world. I have to say I'm not regretting it. I can't be afraid of what I don't know about, can I? But you can't be ready for it either. I don't think I have to be worried about being ready for no Black Dog of Cannon Rock. Do you believe in anything? Do you ever shut up? Hey, if you're scared of old Jenny Greenteeth or the Ad Seed or the Black Dog or whatever else, you needn't be. I'm strong enough to beat them off you. Yeah, I suppose you are. Don't suppose. Know it is truth. We've never talked this much before, have we? Can't talk with a mouthful. Yeah. A child in my arms. You're right strange, Dahy. Yeah. Carrick. What? You smell real nice. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
I guess we snap at readings.
Why not?
Okay.
And you're going to read some of your book, right?
I think I am, yeah. It is set in, the summer after these kids graduate from high school. I use the vernacular, so I may say blankety blank every now and then if I need to, so that we can keep it family friendly today. And so we're going to start with 2000, and this is Jesse's point of view. Hometown. Holding fast to the proverb that whoever works his land will have bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense, Jesse had quickly climbed to the rank of snack bar manager at Laurelton Community Pool. A combination of faith and industry drove him to keep the fryer grate whistle slick, shine the hot dog Ferris wheel spokes with baking soda, and reconcile his till to the penny every single shift. Mr. Connor, the pool's absentee owner, was particularly pleased to discover that Jesse didn't mind doling out neon-colored carcinogenic Slurpees. He was reliable as a Swiss watch and never asked for Friday or Saturday nights off. Until Jesse saw the new lifeguards clocking in that morning, he'd been looking forward to summer. Seth and Tyler graduated with him, but they were more part of the hipster jock achiever set, moving with ease amongst a crowd that Jesse avoided in the hallways, running backs who called him names, point guards and pitchers who pushed his books out of his hands. Jesse wasn't sure where he stood with Seth and Tyler now that they were co-workers and school was out, but he had little time to worry about it. Most of opening day passed him by in an expedited blur of cheese sticks, pizza burgers, and soft serve cones. Then Jesse saw the other new lifeguard, Amanda Hallinan. Everybody knew Amanda because she was the sheriff's niece and one of the few black, or rather half-black, kids at Laurelton High School. She excelled academically and earned letters for varsity track and volleyball. She played the piano at a church and served meals to homeless people on Wednesday nights. She was a passionate defender of animal rights and the only vegetarian Jesse had ever even heard of. She was, in other words, awesome. Her awesomeness compounded because she was polite to Jesse while ordering a Coke and a garden burger. Jesse tried not to stare at the way her swimsuit gathered at the waist. He tried not to notice how dazzling her smile was. Love-struck, he slipped her 2 slices of cheddar cheese for health reasons, praying she did not register his attention to her food or her person. Amanda padded back over to the picnic tables, taking a seat on Tyler's lap while Seth sat across from them singing, tell me more, was it love at first sight?" While he sprayed cheese product on nachos, Jesse wondered what his mother would think of Amanda. He knew his mother would approve of her being churched, but Amanda also embodied all the dangers of immodest women, a definition that in his mother's mind included women who wore pants, called boys up on the telephone, or pierced their ears. His mother's fear of hellfire complicated everything for Jesse. And that's why he was hoping that between the promotion and the overtime, he could get his own place in the fall. Maybe someday he could even go on a date with a girl like Amanda, a real date, not one in which he would be escorted by his mother under yet another of the onerous moral conditions of living at home. Jesse salted some French fries and dropped the basket into the oil, picturing himself in a tux and tie, arriving at Amanda's house on his bicycle. No, that wouldn't do. He would approach her house on foot like an old-fashioned suitor, offer his arm, and present her with a bouquet of hand-picked wildflowers. They would stroll to church together, where Jesse would immediately propose and Amanda would accept, both of them blushing as they said their vows and plunged headlong into the holy sanction of conjugal bliss. The microwave's bleeding timer jolted Jesse from his reverie. He lifted the basket from the fryer, added jalapenos to the nachos, and called, "Order 42!" A guy he recognized from school sauntered over, hat on backwards. His shoulders were meaty as a hogback. The guy smirked. "Hey, chicken." Jesse was used to this. 12 years had passed since Jesse's brother Benjamin died. Parents still whispered Benjamin's tale as a dire warning against the dangers of deviance and sexual immorality. Teachers looked at Jesse with suspicion-tinged pity, and the kids, they just gave Jesse hell. He tried to blend in, but it didn't help that he wasn't allowed to take sex ed class or read books assigned in English due to their obscene situations. Blending in was impossible when he had to sit out gym class because his mother thought that changing in the locker room with the other boys was unwholesome. And it definitely didn't help, no matter how often he begged her to stop, that his mother spent Fridays circling the town square, playing the tambourine, and wearing a sandwich board covered with Bible verses. "Hey, I'm talking to you, chicken." Rudy, that was the guy's name. Jesse vaguely remembered taking a grade school field trip to the llama farm Rudy's parents owned. He slid the plastic tray across the counter. "Nachos ready?" "Got a joke for you," Rudy sneered. "Yes." Jesse knew better than to say it like a question. "You hear about the retard they drowned in the river?" "No," Jesse said. The baseball guys at Rudy's table tittered, their laughter rustling like paper. "The pervert was up there fooling around in front of the girl, so they tied him up and threw him in to drown." Rudy ran his hand over the crotch of his swim trunks, cackling. The snack bar fell quiet. "Wow," Jesse said, wiping the counter clean. "That's awful." From the corner of his eye, Jesse saw Amanda stand up. Hey, what do you think happened to that retard, the peeping Tom?" "I don't know," Jesse said. He could feel Amanda's eyes on him. Before he could stop himself, he leaned into Rudy and stage whispered, "How'd you escape?" I'm going to stop there. I don't know.
I was like, what's happening next?
Well, thank you. That's the greatest flattery. If it's any consolation, Tyler punches him.
Oh, okay.
But it takes a couple pages, and we have time limits, so I don't want to go over my time. Thank you, though. So that's how it starts, is with a fight. Thanks.
Can I ask you a question, Jamie?
Yeah,
I
please
feel
do.
like writing a novel seems so daunting. Like, how do you plan out something of that length and weight and complexity?
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I'm sitting here with a 9-page outline. I have a different way of writing than a lot of novelists. If you're familiar with the National Novel Writing Month thing, they describe writers as 2 sorts of people, and of course there are more, right? But they say you're either a planner or they call you a pantser, like by the seat of the pants. I prefer the skin of the teeth. I think the pants are indelicate, but plus that sounds like it hurts more. But I have tried writing by the skin of my teeth, and it just doesn't work for me. And I truly credit that to studying Aristotle at Kenyon. I'm an Aristotelian through and through. Every time I go to take a breath and I say, my students are like, "Not him again." But I think that the plot is so important, and things will happen sometimes when I'm writing that surprise me, but I do tend to plan out everything, and I also backwards plan, and there's a lot of causality. Within that, I still have an obligation to keep it interesting, so that to credit the editor, David Lynn, he said that great art always has surprise, mastery, and delight. But I spend a lot of time planning, and I have note cards. I have a box about the size of this book, only thicker, all note cards for each chapter. I switch things up, and it's really satisfying when I go through a draft and I am done with the note cards, because then I can tear them into little pieces and throw them away. But it's really, I have to be really regimented in it, and I have to stick with it. I mean, the only way to get it done is to get your seat in the seat and write. And that's something that I'm kind of vicious about, and I make sure I do all the time. So I think that it isn't daunting when I know what I'm doing. I know that if I stall, it's my mind telling me that I don't quite know what I'm talking about yet, and I need to shut up and go for a walk and read the news, listen to things happen around me, cook something, always cook something. And then, I'll start writing again when I know the answer to my own question that's come up. How do you do it with plays? Do you plan this stuff, or does it just happen?
Yeah, it's changed as I've gotten older, because I've started writing musicals and opera now, and I think musicals and opera are probably a little bit more like film, where I think you really have to sort of structure them very meticulously. But in plays, the way that I always do it is I usually start with a title. I'm a very, what I would call, like, atmospheric writer, which this sounds a little pretentious, but I think if you drop 2 very interesting people with different ideas about themselves and the world in an interesting space, something will happen. And so to me, like, an interesting space is anything, and I keep saying this, right? I think as a writer, you have to look at any location as an amusement park. So even if it's set in a white room with no furniture, what I think is interesting about amusement parks is you can do the full range of human emotion there, right? You can be excited, you can be bored, you can be scared, you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be isolated, you can be in community, hungry, full, right? And these are completely affected by the time of the day and the weather. So like an amusement park at night versus an amusement park during the day, it's summer versus winter, when it's closed versus it's open, right? And so I think when you think about this, I always like to think of the external world as a manifestation of the characters' conflicts and emotions. And so usually what I'll do is I'll come up with a title that excites me, and then I'll just drop a couple of people into it in a space that I find interesting and just see what happens. So I always feel like the first draft to me is just the writing of the heart, and I try to keep my mind out of it, and I just sort of let whatever comes out comes out. And this sounds a little sort of like off reality, but I like to let the characters lead me. And then I think the second draft to me is the writing of the mind, which is when you go through and you apply things like Aristotle, who really put plot first, right? This sort of articulation of how the action plays out and structure. And then I think you sort of shape it. But to me, that's sort of seeing and listening what came out in the first draft. And now, how can I now use my, intelligence and skill and craft to sort of formulate that into a narrative that has action that other people can access. But I try not to let that affect the first draft too much, because I think really, surprise is the virtue of writing. And I like to sort of just write and see where it goes, knowing that I'll probably cut 60% of it or rewrite it 12 times. And that's okay, because I think sort of as you get older and you know what sells and what doesn't and what works and what doesn't, you become more critical of your own writing. And so I think for me, what's important in the first draft is to try and get rid of all of those critical faculties and just sort of let it come. And that's I think where the surprising and the interesting and the beautiful stuff comes, is things that you didn't even think that you could write. And now it's like, okay, now how do I make this able to be carried to an audience who doesn't live inside my head, right? Yeah. That to me is the revision. So yeah, it's probably quite similar. But
the characters' voices are so vivid, in your work, and I of course that's the majority of what we hear when you read. Yeah. But I wonder about do you storyboard? Do you do any visual stuff when you're creating for the page? Or because I was thinking about film, right? And you don't necessarily think, goodness, draw every frame. But laying it out that way, is there any aspect of that?
I don't do that in writing, but I think only because I started off my career in theater as a director. And so I think from the directors and the actors and the designers' point of view primarily, and I came to sort of playwriting after doing that. And so for me, I'm writing for the stage, and sort of what does it look like on the stage. And so I think I'm glad to hear you say that, because I hope it's very speakable and very visual. One of my teachers was the wonderful Cuban-American playwright, Maria Irene Fornes. And what she always said to me, which I loved, she said, if you want it on the stage, it has to be in the dialogue. Don't put anything in the stage directions that you can't put in the dialogue. If you want someone standing on their head, someone needs to walk in and say, Joe, why are you standing on your head? And so I think that idea of that the dialogue creates everything that you see, everything that you hear, everything that you feel. And I love finding the rhythms of characters, and to me that's the musicality of the piece, is how characters speak and what's revealed in their speech. So I do really like dialogue as the primary vehicle for the theatrical event, because I think some people have maybe a more contemporary or colloquial way of speaking where it's very sort of economic dialogue. I'm not one of those people, as you may have noticed. And then a lot of it has to fill in with the setting and the subtext and the context and all this stuff. But for me, I really like it when the dialogue carries it all. But yeah. So let me ask you a question. Do you base your characters on people you know, or are these sort of aspects of yourself, or are they assigned to different things that you care about, or where do they come from?
I think the closest thing would be kind of like composites. In a way, I would never want somebody to read something that I wrote and be like, oh my gosh, that's the neighbor, or worse yet, that's me. I think that not me personally, but them, the reader, excuse me, or me, because I don't want to be any of these people. I don't write good people. I think they're, it's not that they're boring, but I think that when, you have, I don't believe in that kind of simplification of character. There are a few places in my life. I think I've known a couple of Jessies, and I've known many Amandas, and unfortunately, plenty of Tylers, to be candid. Too many Tylers. So I would say that I think about a lot, and this again is that theater training, right? I think about when I worked with the San Francisco Mime Troupe, they took us through this great training on Commedia dell'arte, and I think a lot about those stock characters and the way that that they were both could be considered contrived, but there's also so much range within them, and you can blur them together. And I think that if I'm doing it right, then there's a good balance between maybe something someone says or something that I've someone that I have seen around in my life, and a kind of like, I want there to be a certain amount of universality, with it. And the other thing too is there's a lot more complexity to rural culture than I believe we are given credit for. And the piece that's most important for me as someone who is the product of a small town and a small place and small people, our stories are enormously important. And I didn't meet a writer until I went to college, and I thought they were like astronauts, and then like you just had to be a superb physical specimen. And then years later, I went to AWP, and I was like, wow. So, but like with all of that, I think that what I love about being able to lead a writing program in my hometown, when I was growing up, there weren't books like this about places like this. And now I'm seeing a lot more encouragement for people to tell their own stories and to talk about their experiences in places that aren't just, like I remember reading about New York and Paris and London and California or wherever, and now I think we're seeing that it's really up to the writer to make the world interesting. And so I love the title Song of the Wind. Do you mind if I ask you where you came up? Did it?
I actually don't know. It's just one of those things where I was just like, that's I'm just going to write a play called Song of the Wind. Why not? I feel like it's one of those, for me, it's about the intimacy. This sounds so pretentious, I apologize. It's about the intimacy of listening, right? And it's like, I think it's wherever you are, there can be a song if you listen closely enough. And I think, it's funny that we're writing sort of about similar locations with a similar complexity and a love for that complexity. But I think sometimes, right, in the play, a lot of the music is sort of, put on the mainland, and this idea that there is actually this song on the island in this rural landscape if you just listen for it. And sometimes there's music that's softer, right, and harder to hear, but it's there, and I think it's about being open to it. So, yeah. But this was really great to hear your work and be inspired by each other and get entertained and learn something. This was a really great event, so thank you for
coming and joining us. I
you.
want to thank you on behalf of the library and the Brown Bag Chat. If you have questions for us, I guess post them in the YouTube page thing. I've suddenly lost all alacrity with language.
The comments section, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. I'm like, I need a lifeline. And really grateful again to the Ohio Arts Council and to the Public Library of Mount Vernon and Knox County for letting us share our work with you today. And if you want to share your work, go apply for a grant. If you need help with that, email me, and I'll do the best I can to help you get a chance to bring your work into the world. And thanks again, Anton.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, everybody. Yeah,
thanks, everybody.